We've all got secrets, but some secrets are much darker than others. Hugo Boss is a fashion brand associated with wealth, elegance, and status, worn by countless prominent celebrities. However, this fashion icon has done all it can to hide its dark past from the public eye. This is the story of how Hugo Boss supported Hitler, made uniforms for the Nazis, and yet somehow cleansed its image and built a global fashion empire. Part 1. The intriguing beginnings of Hugo Boss. Hugo Boss was born in Germany in 1885 in a town known for its textile industry. In fact, Hugo's parents owned a modest lingerie shop, which sparked his interest in fashion from an early age. As a teen, he took jobs to understand the ins and outs of the industry. He began as an apprentice merchant, then worked in a textile mill, and eventually took over his parents' lingerie shop. After World War I broke out, Hugo served his country. Surviving the war, he returned with a new vision. Rather than running his parents' small shop, he wanted to create his own fashion company and transform the shop into a tailor's named after himself. With experience gained from a young age, it only took him a couple of years to turn his shop into a factory, selling his own brand of jackets, shirts, workwear, sportswear, and raincoats. His apprenticeship as a merchant made Hugo a great salesman, and soon his clothing became well known around Germany. However, post-World War I reparations crippled the German economy, setting the stage for a tough and grueling era. As the US, UK, and France enjoyed extravagant spending, Germany struggled to pay off the war while supporting its own country. High inflation and business closures meant that despite Hugo Boss's clothing popularity, his company began to suffer. The Great Depression worsened Germany's economic situation, making food scarce and jobs difficult to find. In an effort to save his business, Hugo began making uniforms for the German police and other government officials. Unfortunately, this was not enough. Hugo was forced to lay off most of his workforce and shut down his factory. Eventually, he filed for bankruptcy, leaving him with only 6 sewing machines. It seemed like the Hugo Boss clothing brand would be nothing but a short-lived dream. Part 2. Deal with the Devil. Germany was in a desperate situation, and they sought help from anyone. During this time, Adolf Hitler rose to power. For Hugo Boss, this was an opportunity. He knew that those close to the Nazi Party were eligible for government contracts, so he became a proud supporter of the Nazis and an active member of the Nazi Party from 1931 onward. Hugo made connections with high-ranking members within the party, making him a prime candidate to produce the newly designed Nazi uniforms. He won a contract to begin producing their uniforms, starting with brown shirts for the Nazis, and eventually uniforms for soldiers, police, and the Hitler Youth. To meet growing demand, Hugo needed more equipment and employees, so he took out loans to expand his company. Financially, his allegiance to Hitler paid off massively. As Hitler began his conquest of Europe, Hugo Boss received help through the use of French and Polish forced laborers, producing uniforms for the Nazi Party and the SS under harsh conditions. While Hugo Boss publicly supported the Nazis, researchers concluded that he was a loyal Nazi and follower of National Socialism. He reportedly hung a photo of himself with Hitler in his apartment. After the war, Hugo Boss was investigated, and he was banned from owning a business. He died in 1948, leaving the company in a dire situation. Part 3. Rebuilding the brand. After Hugo Boss's death, his son-in-law Eugen Holy took over, producing uniforms for the police and postal workers. The Hugo Boss brand had become a shell of its former self. In the early 1950s, the company produced an order of suits, marking a major turning point. Eugen rebranded the company, focusing on high-quality materials and elegant designs, transforming Hugo Boss into a popular brand for stylish men's suits. Eugen's efforts paid off, and the company grew bigger than it had been under Hugo Boss. They tried to keep the founder's political views private, but it was an ongoing battle. In 1969, Eugen retired, handing the business to his ambitious sons, determined to make Hugo Boss a global fashion icon. Part 4. The Boss Era. The brothers marketed Hugo Boss as a men's designer brand focused on premium suits. Their strategy to use Italian materials, modernize factories, and outsource production helped the brand's reputation. They rebranded as Boss and expanded globally, using endorsement deals and strategic marketing. Endorsements from stars like Sylvester Stallone and participation in the yuppie movement of the 1980s boosted the brand. Focusing initially on suits proved extremely profitable, and eventually they expanded into more product lines, including fragrances.